What's up, nerds? It's your boy, the OGGM. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. It is the 22nd day of December 2022. It is about 53 degrees and cloudy here at Site B. I'm joined by Steve, who is in a very ruckus mood. So if the camera gets knocked off or if you hear any weird noises, that's why. Okay, it's Thursday. And, something happened yesterday that has caused quite the uproar in the tabletop role-playing game community in regards to Wizards of the Coast's announcement yesterday around 5:30 in the afternoon that they were going to be creating a new OGL and SRD sometime in early 2023 in preparation for whatever it is we're going to see in 2024. Now, the minor thing that everybody seems to have skipped over is that they are now calling it 6th edition. Speaking of Wizards of the Coast 6th edition and 1D&D, today is the last day to take the survey on D&D Beyond for round 3 of the playtest. The survey will go up probably tomorrow. It'll be scheduled to stop at the end of the year, and at the end of the year they'll extend it for another week or two, just like they've done for the past 3 times, until they get the numbers that they want, which is I think 20 grand worth of responses. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the changes to the cleric class and the information regarding the changes of the word race to species, that's still up on D&D Beyond. And that's how this all began. It all started with this race species thing. We're not going to get into that. That is the province of people who are far more educated than I am, like Grim Jim. Shout out to Grim Jim. So where did this begin and how did we get here? There's a new product coming out in 2024, D&D 6th edition. HASBRO bought D&D Beyond. HASBRO claims that there is a D&D virtual tabletop coming out sometime after 2024 to support D&D Beyond games and stuff. Hasbro made it very clear in 2020 that their intention for Dungeons & Dragons as a brand was to go digital and was to reach out to more markets to monetize Dungeons & Dragons in new and exciting ways that they haven't really done since the 80s. I mean, when was the last time you saw a D&D shrinky-dink? Again, at the beginning of this year, they made that announcement again. Somehow, despite reporting upon it multiple times, despite it being one of the number one topics in all the trades, people somehow forgot that Hasbro said they were going to do this 2 years ago at the beginning of the year. Earlier this month, Jeremy Crawford was rolled out of whatever closet they keep him in, and he made a comment about the state of the OGL in relations to Dungeons & Dragons 6th edition, in relation to the digital evolution of Dungeons & Dragons and the goals of Hasbro Wizards of the Coast to take Dungeons & Dragons into a sole proprietary word based around this new digital marketplace. Again, there should not come as any surprise to anyone that this is what Hasbro intended to do with Dungeons & Dragons, because since they told you this is what they were going to do with Dungeons & Dragons in 2020. And again, they told you at the beginning of this year, this is what we're going to do with Dungeons & Dragons. So, yeah. So far, so good. Except in this discussion, Crawford said something about the state of the OGL in regards to future D&D. This caused some confusion and some questions, and some fear, and some concern. So, in the infinite wisdom that is Wizards of the Coast, they came out with another statement that was even more confusing and concerning. And then again, furthering this confusion, they posted the statement yesterday regarding the future of the OGL and the future of the 1D&D 6th edition product, and how it is going to affect independent third-party creators of content. for Dungeons and Dragons and D20 mechanics. Now, I don't know what Wizards of the Coast's initial intention was. I don't know what Hasbro is thinking. Well, I kind of have a suspicion what Hasbro is thinking, but we'll get to that because there's only two possible scenarios here. But in defense of Wizards of the Coast, I will again say that in somewhere, this makes sense. If you take all personal opinion, all emotion, all anger, all sense of logic, and just look at what they're saying, it makes sense what they're trying to do. Unfortunately, as always with Wizards of the Coast, what they're trying to do and what they're actually doing are two separate things. While the idea originally might have made sense, what we're seeing today makes no sense whatsoever. Now, in questioning why Wizards of the Coast would do it, the general response is, well, they want to keep their shareholders happy by making money. I am a Dungeons & Dragons Wizards of the Coast Hasbro shareholder. I am not happy about this decision regarding the OGL 2.0 because it will not make me money. It will cost me money because Hasbro stock and Wizards of the Coast stock will crash because of this announcement and because of the statements that they made. Well, then, I guess Hasbro / Wizards of the Coast is trying to make their fan base happy. I have not heard one person say they are excited about 1D&D. If there is anybody out there who is actually going, I love every choice that they're making, I can't wait to play 1D&D 6th edition when it comes out in 2024, I haven't met them. I haven't seen them. Nobody I know, nobody I've seen online, even the pro 5e Wizards of the Coast fearmongers and fan base and the crazy people like Daniel Huan and Connie Chang and nobody has said I'm excited about this. And in response to yesterday's announcement, I don't see one person coming forward and going, God, I love the changes they are going to make to the OGL and the SRD in 2024. I cannot wait to follow them. If there is anybody out there who feels this is a actually good idea and they're excited about this, please let me know, because my tuna fish of a brain sees absolutely nothing positive about this. I see what they were trying to do, but as always, the way they have done it is completely nonsense. So, starting in 2023, there will be a brand new SRD for Wizards of the Coast D20 product. This is a good thing. The SRD needs some cleaning up and some changes with all the changes that have been made since day one. But it's sort of pointless to do it now because there will be a brand new SRD that comes out with 1D&D. So changing the SRD is good. Changing it now, not so good. We know there will be a new SRD with 6th edition. It will look nothing like the current SRD. Really? So, we're not really going to worry about the system reference document. We're going to worry about the OGL. We're going to worry about the statements that Wizards of the Coast made in regards to the OGL and the fear-mongering tactics that were hidden in there. And as we're uncovering more of what this new OGL things, we're seeing more things that really don't make sense. Like it was announced in furthering what they plan to do with this new OGL, they're not going to support the video games that use 5e. So if you're a fan of Celesta or looking forward to Baldur's Gate 3 or any other video game out there that uses the 5e engine, according to the new OGL, Wizards of the Coast isn't going to let people do that anymore. So no more Celesta, no more Baldur's Gate 3, no more Neverwinter Nights, no more anything that is using the D20 SRD mechanics in a video game. Can Wizards of the Coast do that? No, they can't. Are they going to try and do that? Yes, they can. And in regards to third-party PDF production for 5th edition through whatever. Again, they're saying things like, we're not going to let people do that. We're not going to let third parties support that going forward. What they're trying to do is they're trying to say, we will only support one D&D 6th edition product that we officially contract, that is presented on our official format, D&D Beyond, and that we get a cut of. If you, the OGGM, for some reason wants to make content using 6th edition rules and publish it on Big Geek Emporium, we're going to try and tell you you can't. If you, Paizo, want to make content for one D&D and you make a lot of money off of it, we're going to tell you you can't, and we're also going to tell you we want a percentage. Now, this will somehow backwards into 5e product. At least that's what they're trying to do. So if I, the OGGM, decide to write a product for 5e and post it on Big Geek Emporium, they're going to say, well, that falls under the new OGL, so we want a percentage, and we want control of what you do. And we really want you to publish your third-party OGL 5e stuff on things we control. So what they want to do is they want to move everything to the digital places they control. They want you to spend the monthly fee to be able to have access to the VTT and have access to the DM's Guild and have access to D&D Beyond. They want you to make third-party content that falls under the new OGL for 6e, post it, pay to have it posted on D&D Beyond, and then if it actually ever sells through DM's Guild or D&D Beyond, they want a percentage of it. So any money you make off of content you put on a Wizards of the Coast approved digital library, they're going to charge you to use the service, and then they're going to take a percentage if you make more than a certain amount of money per sales. Also, apparently you have to tell them if you are making OGL content and if you've made any money off of it, and you have to now, they say, put a little sticker on it. Well, that's the same thing they've said on DM's Guild. If you want to put stuff on DM's Guild, you have to put the official Wizards of the Coast sticker on it so we get our percentage. So these are all fear-mongering tactics to get people to panic and fall in line and say, they're going to take my OGL toys away. I'm not going to be able to make OGL OSR third-party product anymore unless I fall in line. And if I want to make my $10 off of selling my $100 product, I have to be willing to give them $2.5 out of my $10 to continue to sell the product that they approve of. So that's what it appears like Wizards of the Coast is trying to do. They're trying to gain complete digital control over the future of Dungeons & Dragons and any money made from Dungeons & Dragons as they take Dungeons & Dragons branding into new areas that they haven't really branded in a while. If you look back to some of the weird stuff that came out in the 80s for D&D sponsored stuff, who remembers D&D Shrinky Dinks? Okay, so this is what they have said. This is what they're trying to do. This is all coated with legalese peanut butter and sliced between two innocuous, less threatening, but threatening pieces of bread. We're not threatening you, but we're threatening you. We're not telling you we're going to take your toys away, but we're insinuating we're going to take your toys away if you continue to do X. So, that's where we stand as of today. And a lot of that seems kind of scary. Oh, I'm a big fan of Baldur's Gate. What do you mean now I can't buy that? Oh, I want to create a video game using the 5e engine. What do you mean I can't? Oh, I want to make a third-party content that uses the OGL, but for something else other than D&D. Because remember, there are other games that use the OGL, like Mutants and Masterminds. And most of the OSR stuff, like, Old School Essentials. They all technically fall under the OGL. The stuff that I do on Big Geek Emporium technically falls under the OGL because it uses things like armor class, hit points, blah, 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 blah. So that's what they're trying to get you to be afraid of. And by getting you afraid and getting you to panic, they're hoping that will drive more people to fall in line under what they want to do with D&D because they think this is a good idea. They are under the impression that this global digital D&D marketplace is something people actually want and something that will make them money and something that people will enjoy. Why do they think people want this? Video games. Video games have a huge digital market, and video game companies have huge control over the product related to their video games. If you go and play Fortnite, there is a huge digital economy in Fortnite where you pay real everyday money to get a hat. You pay real everyday money to get a sweatshirt that says Fortnite on it. You pay real everyday money to subscribe and keep using these services like Diablo and World of Warcraft. And then you pay real everyday money to go to these digital marketplaces and buy hats. And there are companies who have made bank simply off of the digital marketplace. Path of Exile. You do not pay a dime for Path of Exile. Path of Exile makes all its money off of its digital e-commerce. You will never get a real hat from that video game, but your character will have. And Wizards of the Coast thinks this will work for 6th edition. It won't, but they think it will. So now, let's take all that panic, all that frightening, all that fear-mongering, bam, and get down to brass tacks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, none of that is anything Wizards of the Coast can actually do, okay? So do not be afraid. Wizards of the Coast is not going to take your OGL toys away. Wizards of the Coast cannot stop you from using the OGL. Even if they make a new OGL, the previous OGL still exists, and you can create product using the previous OGL. Because the Library of Congress says in regards to copywriting game mechanics, you can't. So Wizards of the Coast can cry and whine and threaten you and rattle their cages and do all these things, but unless they can convince the Library of Congress, the Department of Trademarks, to change the rules regarding copyright, this is all just stuff and nonsense. This is just roaring and thunder that will amount to nothing. They cannot come after you. They cannot take the money. If for some reason they actually try, like they did with the OGL in the past, they will fail, like they did with the OGL in the past. And if anybody remembers the 4th edition wars and how Wizards of the Coast ended up at the end of the 4th edition wars, they know that Wizards of the Coast was the loser. And everything they did during the 4th edition wars ended up costing them money and sending players to another game. During the 4th edition years, Paizo's Pathfinder was the #1 selling most popular fantasy role-playing game there was. The OGL was huge. Tons of OGL games were coming out, and they were all kicking ass. Mutants and Masterminds? Anyone? The OSR became huge, mostly thanks to the OGL. So they can't stop you from publishing third-party content for any game that uses the D20 engine and falls under the OGL. They cannot stop you. They cannot stop you from making product for 1st edition D&D, 2nd edition D&D, 3rd edition D&D, 4th edition D&D, or 5th edition D&D. They cannot stop OSR creators from making OSR games. They cannot do that. All they can do is have control over what you publish on D&D Beyond and DM's Guild. And you don't have to publish on D&D Beyond and DM's Guild. There are hundreds of other sites out there that will publish your content, be it 5e or whatever, and not care. They cannot go after your money. They will try, but they can't. They cannot. With regards to Celestra and the video games using the 5e engine, can they stop them from using it? Digital copyright is different than normal copyright. But again, it just really depends. They can change enough things, probably, that they could continue to use the mechanics without inciting the rage of Wizards of the Coast employees, lawyers, whatever. 3 points, they just changed 3 things in the code or whatever, and there's nothing Wizards of the Coast could do about it. So you are fine. The OGL is fine. The OSR is fine. Your product is fine. Your money is fine. Wizards of the Coast cannot take away your toys. It's completely understandable why they're doing this. The way they're doing this is nonsensical and self-destructive and will only end up with them holding the bag and being the bad guy, as hundreds and hundreds of players are looking at this and going, you know what, I'm going to try out Castles and Crusades or Pathfinder or Rifts and just wait and see, Again, nobody is excited about 1D&D. Nobody is saying, I cannot wait to play 6th edition. Nobody is saying, I cannot wait to follow these new rules. No one. If there is somebody out there who's saying that, please let me know. And I don't mean 5e shills like certain individuals whose names I can't say anymore because I promised I wouldn't, but actual players, because I haven't met any. Final question. Why would Hasbro let this happen? Hasbro assuredly knew what was coming down the pike. They have replaced 3 major members of the Wizards of the Coast team with brand new employees. And it looks like they're going to be replacing another one with this brand new head of creativity for Wizards of the Coast, which means chances are Crawford or Perkins are gone. Why would Hasbro let this do this? Well, there's 2 reasons. Reason number 1, they just don't care anymore. They're just like, I don't understand this. I don't understand the hobby. I don't understand these kids. Come up with ways we can make money and control the IP because we want to make Dungeons and Dragons the breakfast cereal. We're just greedy, money hungry, blah, 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 and we think this is a good idea because it will appease our shareholders. Except, of course, the shareholders are not happy about this because the stock has dropped 40%. Blah, 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 blah. Money, money, money. We're stupid. And this seems like a good idea. That's one reason why Hasbro might let it happen. It's a dumb reason, but it's a possible reason that Hasbro thinks this is a good idea. They're looking at, these games in this digital marketplace, and they're going, how can we make money off of it? How can we control D&D? How can we, stab our third-party competition in the back? That could be stuff. Maybe Hasbro has forgotten how much of a hit they've taken this year with the handling of Magic. Maybe Hasbro has forgotten how badly they got hurt during 4th edition. So maybe that's one possible explanation. And probably that's the explanation most of the haters are going to cling on to. Hasbro's doing this because they hate D&D. Hasbro's doing this because they hate us. Hasbro's doing this because they don't understand the marketplace, blah, 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 blah. The other reason is, possible reason why Hasbro's letting this happen, is at the beginning of 2022, they expected Wizards of the Coast to make them $1 billion. Most of that from Magic, the rest of it from D&D. As 2022 played out, they saw that they were not going to make $1 billion. In fact, they ended Q3 in a $60 million hole. And as we spiral into Q4 and the end of the year, Hasbro stock is down 40%. And that's mostly because of the mishandling of Magic and the mishandling of D&D. Hasbro sees this. Hasbro feels Wizards of the Coast owes them. So what Hasbro might be doing is giving Wizards of the Coast enough rope. They've already replaced 3 major department heads. They're about to replace a 4th. Rumor is, from my source at Hasbro, another one will be gone by the end of 2023. So at least 5 major heads will be gone. The mishandling of Magic is going to be addressed, even though Hasbro claims they're fine with it. So this could be an example of Hasbro going, let's just keep giving Wizards of the Coast rope. Maybe this works and we can pull ourselves out of this hole, win. But if it doesn't work by the end of 2023, and we're still in this Wizards of the Coast hole, well, then we can sell Wizards of the Coast off to cut our losses. So what Hasbro could be doing is going, hey, do whatever you want. Here, just hold this rope, okay? And we're just going to see what's going to happen over this year and how people are going to respond to this announcement and the things that you're saying and doing. And if by the end of 2023, we don't see the funds that we thought we were going to make refunded, if we don't see that $1 billion loss inflated and replaced with a win, well, you know what, Wizards of the Coast, we don't need you. We really don't. Because we can get anybody to publish Dungeons & Dragons, or we could just sell off the Dungeons & Dragons license to another game company. We don't need you to make D&D for us. If we want to continue to control D&D, we can just get Renaissance or another third party to make it and not have to deal with you at all. And if for some ridiculous reason we want to sell off Dungeons & Dragons the game, we can, even though we're going to take a loss, because the amount of money we're going to get from selling it off will more than equal the amount of money we lost over 2023 because of your continued mishandling of Magic and your continued mishandling of D&D. And we don't need you to make Magic the Gathering. We can make that ourselves, or we can, farm it off to a third-party company in China and have them make Magic the Gathering stuff for us. Hasbro doesn't need Wizards of the Coast. And Hasbro understands that when it comes to Dungeons & Dragons money, they're always going to make more money off of Dungeons & Dragons branding than they are at the Dungeons & Dragons product line. No matter what the inevitable result of this 6th edition disaster is, Hasbro will make money off of Dungeons & Dragons the coffee, Dungeons & Dragons the video game, Dungeons & Dragons the t-shirt, Dungeons & Dragons the breakfast cereal, Dungeons & Dragons the flamethrower. The kids love that one. Maps, all that third-party supplemental stuff that they can brand the D&D logo onto will still make them money, no matter what. So that's the other reason why Hasbro is letting this happen, and that's the more likely of the 2 reasons why Hasbro is letting this happen. So in closing, because I've talked way too much about this, don't panic. Your third-party content is fine. Wizards of the Coast can't take away your toys. Wizards of the Coast can't take away your money. Wizards of the Coast can't stop you playing D&D. Wizards of the Coast can't stop you publishing third-party content for any version of D&D. Wizards of the Coast cannot stop companies like Green Ronin from making Mutants and Masterminds or the Age system or any other system that uses a variation of D20. Wizards of the Coast cannot kill or stop the OSR. The OGL is fine. Wizards of the Coast cannot take your money, and the Hasbro police are not going to show up at your front door, kick it open, and say you're playing D&D wrong. That will never happen. And why Hasbro would let this go on this long? Well, everything they're doing sort of makes sense. And from some point of view, I could see why they would say, yes, do this, because we think we can still make money off of this ridiculous idea if we have complete control over the digital rights of 6th edition product. That could be the reason, but more likely the reason is, okay, we're giving you a year to pull yourselves out of this mess. We're giving you the rope. We hired these new people to give you help, but at the end of 2023 we're not seeing a change, and we're still where we were at the end of 2022. Maybe it's time to rethink whether we actually need Wizards of the Coast or not. Nobody wins in this, especially Wizards of the Coast. So if Wizards of the Coast really thinks this is a good thing, that they're going to come out shining like a rose, that's not going to happen. Okay? There's just no way that's going to happen. Now, I know some people want me to respond to the video that a certain individual put up yesterday, but I'm not going to. I don't want to be part of that hate. So, thanks for the free press, you idiot. I am the OGGM, your number one guide to all the tabletop role-playing game news, weather, and general internet nonsense, reminding you again, hold on to your hats, boys and girls. 2023 is going to be a bumpy ride for the tabletop role-playing game community. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe to the nonsense that comes out of my mouth, please take a moment to subscribe and help me reach 1 billion subs by the end of 2023. I mean, I know I'm not going to get 1 billion subs, but if we're going to have a goal, we might have a ridiculous one. Please like, please share, please subscribe. Please let me know what you think about all this and why this is happening and stuff like that. And if you're looking for some last-minute Christmas presents for the gamer in your life, don't forget that the OGGM has merch. I've got stickers. And stickers make great stocking stuffers. Also, in regards to my own Flag of Defiance, you can find all my OSR product on Big Geek Emporium. Check them out. Till next time, stay safe out there.